Alright, welcome back folks. Mark here, and in today's video we will be analyzing Robber of the Rich. Now, I know I said in my last video that I didn't consider these my fun videos, but after posting a little online, I am having a lot more fun. I ended up posting this on the TG board and had got some great responses. People were interested, and then I posted on Reddit more about Magic the Gathering, uh, specifically about analyzing cards, and the response was, let's just say, a bit salty. So, that being said, they did bring up some good points, and so a couple of those I just want to talk about. And the first of which is the topic that I think I began the first open letter video with, was that I expect people to be skeptical here, and that's why I'm showing you what I'm doing here. That's why I'm talking through my process and telling you as much as I can. That's why I wrote the open letter. I'm kind of debating whether or not to put the link to the Reddit thread pinned in the comments. I'll decide after this video gets uploaded. But I mean, I'm not trying to hide anything here, and I'm not. I'm not profiting off of this by telling you how to analyze the power level of Magic cards. So and the other thing too is that what I'm saying, as I stated in the first video, my analysis here is just kind of quick to show you how to do it, and I am trying to be as accurate as possible. But the point is that the more people that do this and the more people look at cards and analyze them, the more accurate answers we'll get. This is meant to be a science. If we have answers that are inaccurate, where we need to speculate, then it's not as good as, say, something like Grizzly Bear, where we know definitely, well, I can tell you, it's a 2/2, it's got no abilities, and it costs 2 mana. That is perfectly balanced. And so I may do kind of a short video on something like Grizzly Bears later, but yeah. So we'll get into here. We'll talk about stuff, but really just as I do more of these videos, and I definitely want to get into stuff like Black Lotus and kind of those other cards. But as I do more of these, you'll see more of the process. You'll see how I go through a card. You'll see what I'm talking about and how I'm analyzing these things. And throughout the whole process here, if you have any questions, please just let me know, and I will try to answer them. And I'll also continue to make an effort to try and make these videos as short as possible. I know I kind of ramble, but I will try to minimize that while going into as much detail as I can. So, let's get into Robber of the Rich, and I will cover a few topics here at the end, but I know you want to get to this. So, Robber of the Rich, red creature here, converted mana cost of 2. It's 1 colorless and 1 red. It is a 2/2, and its abilities are Reach and Haste. And then, whenever Robber of the Rich attacks, if defending player has more cards in hand than you, exile the top card of their library. During any turn you attacked with a rogue, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. And one of the great things here in context of the Reddit thread for this card is that we actually do have to do quite a bit of speculation in terms of that last ability. And this is because this is pretty much the first time that this ability has been printed. There's really not much else to compare it to, except for 2 other cards, one of which is also from Throne of Eldraine. So Covetous Urge is from Throne of Eldraine, and then we also have Psychic Intrusion. I think that might be from Theros. So Covetous Urge. Actually, no. I'm sorry. Before we get into that, let's talk about the other stuff here. We'll get into this third ability in a second. So 2/2. Again, the way you analyze power and toughness is you add them together, divide them by 2 rounded down. So if we take 2/2 That's 4 divided by 2 rounded down is 2. So that should give us a play cost of 2. And the 4 is the deck cost. So we can talk about deck cost for this card, but just the play cost is what we're looking for, the casting cost. So that should add 2. Converted, by the way. So, reach, I can go over this in a future video if you want, but I hope it's not too controversial to say reach is a conditional ability. It does not add to the casting cost of a creature. In my opinion, please feel free to argue. Haste. Now, haste normally, I think, is actually a conditional ability, and I know the whole point is that, well, as soon as a creature with haste comes out, you can attack with it, so it's always useful. But I think, as many of us have seen, just because a creature has haste does not necessarily mean you want to play it as soon as it's in your hand. And the fact that it has haste may not even be useful. You may just have to put that creature out, and haste isn't used at all, because it's only relevant as soon as it comes into play. And however, though, sometimes other abilities can affect whether an ability is conditional or non-conditional. And I went over this in the open letter a little bit with the example of First Strike and Shadow, where Shadow makes First Strike conditional. Normally it's non-conditional. So it's kind of the opposite here. Normally this is conditional, but this ability, I think, makes haste non-conditional. So I'm going to argue here that haste actually adds to the casting cost of Robber of the Rich. And so now we can get into this last ability here. And in order to do that, we should first look at other cards and then compare, what we can find, but also look at the cost of those cards, look at game mechanics, look at just, how Magic is, and analyze as best a cost as we can, in this case, because we don't have much to compare it to. Otherwise, you could get much more accurate readings with more data, but here we don't have much. So, Covetous Urge and Covetous Urge and Psychic Intrusion have the same card text, but Covetous Urge costs 4 mana that can be either blue or black, or black. Psychic Intrusion costs 3 colorless, a blue and a black. So Psychic Intrusion, converted mana cost of 5. Covetous Urge, converted mana cost of 4. They are sorceries, and their card text reads, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from that player's graveyard or hand and exile it. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. So, compared to Robber of the Rich, those sorceries are much more versatile. They allow you to look at your opponent's hand. You can choose anything from their graveyard or hand to exile, not just the top card of their library. And in addition, you can cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. Robber of the Rich, yes, you could potentially activate this multiple times, but it requires you to attack. It actually, kind of working backwards here, you can only cast that card during a turn that you attacked with a rogue, and it's self-activated because it's also a rogue, which is nice. But if you exiled it and then this left, then you couldn't activate it anymore. Whereas with Psychic Intrusion and Covetous Urge, you could. But this requires that it attacks, and actually this is a non-conditional, if you want to call it, ability, because it's not when it deals damage, it's only when it attacks. So I consider that non-conditional, even though it has this restriction here, if defending player has more cards in their hand than you. But yeah, you're exiling just the top card of their library. And so I think that you can objectively say at the very least that this is not as useful of an ability as the text on we'll talk Covetous Urge. And so therefore, if we take Covetous Urge and Psychic Intrusion to be a decent enough cost, at least for Wizards of the Coast to print, whether or not that's true, let's just assume that those actually are balanced costs. And I think that they're probably about equivalent. Covetous Urge requiring 4, but requiring they all be colored mana, whereas Psychic Intrusion, you just need 1 blue, 1 black, and you can have 3 colorless. I think those are about equivalent. So if we talk in Covetous Urge terms, having a converted mana cost of 4, I think is reasonable. Or if you want to say 5, because those are colored. Either way, I think this is definitely not going to cost 4 or 5. I think it's going to be less. And I think, based on what it does, that it is reasonable to say that it has a cost of 3. That's my guess. And you could argue that it costs 2. I don't know if you want to say it costs 1, but I think it's reasonable to say that this ability would cost 3 to give to a creature. And so if we add everything up here, we've got 2 for power and toughness, we've got 3 for this ability, so that's 5, plus 1 for haste is 6, nothing for reach. So I think Robber of the Rich, if it has currently a casting cost of 2, that it has a power level of 4, because it should have a converted mana cost of 6. And if you said that that was 2 instead of 3, then maybe it would be 5. Yeah, I think Robber of the Rich has a power level of 4. And if I had to guess for what that cost should be, I would say probably either 3 colorless and 3 red, or maybe, I don't know, 4 colorless and 2 red? I don't know. You could say that this would add 2 red, and that it being a red creature, maybe you say that if it already has an ability that gives it red, then that doesn't add to it, so that's just 2. Or maybe you just want to say it's just a red creature and this isn't a specifically red ability. Or you could justify the red from, paying for haste. I don't know. But I think, yeah, probably either 3 colorless and 3 red, or 4 colorless and 2 red wouldn't be out of the question. And then the last thing that I wanted to go over was back to the previous video for Trample and Haste. And at least one person had some comments on this on the Reddit thread. But abilities being conditional and non-conditional doesn't necessarily have to do with how good they are. That's more the cost. It's got to do with whether they are always useful or sometimes useful, just in really simple terms. And I went over this in the open letter if you want to read it, in the open letter videos if you want to watch those. And I explained a little bit here some of my reasoning for these. But for Trample, my argument there is that in order for Trample to be useful, it first of all, it requires a few things. It requires game states in order to be useful, kind of like Haste. So first, it needs to be given to a creature that has a high enough power to have a good chance of actually dealing trample damage. And then, of course, it needs to defend or be defended against by a creature or creatures with less toughness than its power. If it just attacks with no defenders to stop it, and it just deals damage straight to your opponent, then it having trample also doesn't matter. So, in my opinion, and so far, I say opinion or hypothesis, but I think it is objective enough to print in my own game that trample is conditional. And you may, want to argue that trample seems more useful than lifelink, but lifelink is non-conditional. You just need to do damage in order for it to be used, in order for it to activate, in order for it to do anything. It doesn't require specific game states. It doesn't require a specific power or toughness or certain range or whatever. Even though you may think that lifelink isn't as good as trample, in mechanical terms, it is non-conditional. So that's why those things are that way. And I'll go over more of these points, at least from Mage War's point of view, in the future videos where I go over the rules in more detail and actually go over all of the abilities. Hoping to do that soon. And also, for deck construction. But going back here to Magic, I definitely also want to analyze, cards like Siege Rhino. That's going to be really fun. But to cards like Black Lotus. And I think Black Lotus to me is less interesting than analyzing Siege Rhino or analyzing something like Felidar Guardian. Or even, the cards from Throne of Eldraine. Because Black Lotus is already known to be broken. I mean, kind of like Felidar Guardian, it's already banned. But also, the price on Black Lotus is already so high. It's really just going to be for academic purposes to understand or to figure out what Black Lotus could or should cost. So I don't think it's going to be as interesting or as fun as going over other cards. But yeah, I will do that prep work, and at some point I'll want to do the Black Lotus video. And so stay tuned for that. And let's see here. Was there anything else I wanted to say? I guess just like moving forward with this, I always want to say as much as I can, explain as much as I can, and that's why it's important that people ask questions. If there's something that you want me to clarify, if there's a point that you just don't get, let me know. Try to do that in as non-confrontational a way, I guess, as you can. But I'll try to just read through things. And I understand that this is emotional for some people, a lot of people. Because even for some it's an investment. So I try to read past that. But yeah, if you have any questions, I want to go into as much detail as I can. I want to talk about all the topics. If there's something that I'm just not saying, if there's something you feel that like I'm leaving out, let me know, and I'll try to cover that topic. Just to talk about this from as many different angles as I can, to try and get you to understand what I'm doing and how to do it for yourself. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If there's something else, I'll start talking about it in the next video. Not sure what that's going to be. Might be those undercosted cards, kind of the junk cards, but we'll see. So thank you so much for watching, and bye.